This is CBC Vancouver News.
I find it disappointing because it's essential that you bring at least the minimum equipment.
Hiking essentials. North Shore Rescue weighs in on what they call misinformation online.
There's hate in the world, there's evil in the world, but there's also good in the world.
And confronting Islamophobia. 6 years after a deadly mosque shooting, there's renewed action to combat racism.
They have given of themselves in extraordinary ways in service to their communities.
Plus, Champions for Change. The province recognizes outstanding citizens for their work in the community. Good evening, I'm Janella Hamilton. Thanks for joining us. Leanne is away tonight. There is growing controversy over what hikers should or should not take with them while in the backcountry. For years, advocates have recommended a long list of essential items to help keep people safe. Now they're worried about what they're calling misinformation online. Yasmin Gandam reports.
North Shore Search and Rescue say the difference between being prepared and not having the right equipment is life and death.
A probe, a transceiver. This is going to produce a signal, so you're going to wear this. So if you get caught in an avalanche, it's going to allow people to locate where you are, and then you're going to need a shovel.
The essential gear you need also depends on the season, with winter bringing an increase in avalanche risk. Having the right clothing is a non-negotiable.
But this can make the difference between you having hypothermia and not having hypothermia. So this little puffy here is a great thing to have. Obviously, having a Gore-Tex jacket is very important, especially in this climate.
He also recommends having a headlamp and a satellite device.
You're not relying on this for anything else other than calling for help.
Danks and other search and rescue crews in BC are worried this message is getting lost, as a study from the U.S. circulates online. It argues hikers only need 4 essentials: water, food, extra clothing, and a medical kit, that the rest is unnecessary.
I find it disappointing because it's essential that you bring at least the minimum equipment.
But BC Search and Rescue says it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it.
It's like asking someone who came back from a car ride, did you need your seatbelt in the airbag? No, I didn't need it. But if you ask someone who was in an accident if they needed that seatbelt or that airbag, they would have a different story.
BC Search and Rescue has been collecting data for years to keep people safe. There are more than 1,700 rescues a year, and many because hikers were unprepared.
50% aren't injured, and of that, 25% didn't have a navigational aid. 10% got trapped by darkness. They didn't have the right gear. They didn't have flashlights.
Advocates don't want anyone to leave behind essential items, and when you take your cell phone,
please make sure that you have a backup battery for your phone.
Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Vancouver.
Canada's premiers are set to meet with the Prime Minister next week to discuss a potential deal to increase federal health funding. They are asking the federal government to boost its contributions through the Canada Health Transfer. The premiers are demanding Ottawa increase its share of healthcare spending to 35% from 22% with no strings attached. CBC's chief political correspondent Rosemary Barton spoke to BC Health Minister Adrian Dix about the progress being made on healthcare negotiations.
Very important reforms are taking place right now in BC and elsewhere that improve public health care. I think we need the federal government, we need everyone to be part of that, and I think we managed to convince the federal government to do so, and that's great news for everybody.
It's been made pretty clear to me from the Prime Minister's office that this is a working meeting, and apparently that's been made clear to the premiers as well. So what would be your and your boss's, Premier Eby's, expectation about what comes from the meeting?
That we make progress, that the federal government make a commitment, and not just a year-to-year commitment, which is typically what the federal government does in healthcare. They sign short-term agreements that don't constrain them in the long term. To respond to the significant health human resources problems we're facing, make sure we have doctors and nurses and health sciences professionals, we need agreements that are going to last over time. And if the federal government has something to say about that, those agreements, that they should come to the table and talk about that. So we see it as a working meeting as well. And I know Premier Eby is committed to making it work.
Dix says a major impediment has been overcome simply by agreeing to sit down at the February 7th talks in Ottawa. The premiers had been asking for 2 years to meet. 6 years have passed since a gunman killed 6 people and injured others in an attack on a Quebec mosque. And Muslims in BC are emphasizing the importance of increased awareness.
There's hate in the world, there's evil in the world, but there's also good in the world. And what we're trying to do is to just foster this goodness that we all have within us and try to let that light shine.
The province released a statement today calling on British Columbians to confront Islamophobia and racist violence, while in Quebec, a memorial was held in the room where the gunman opened fire. The event followed a federal announcement earlier in the week naming Amira El-Gawabi as Canada's first representative to combat Islamophobia. A group of British Columbians are being recognized by the province for exemplary service to their communities. This year's Medal of Good Citizenship recipients include 3 young community workers. Sohrab Sandhu was there learning more about their contributions.
From collecting toys for sick kids to fighting climate change, these young award recipients have done it all.
They have given of themselves in extraordinary ways in service to their communities.
I'm so honored to be here with such an amazing group of people.
University student Rashika Selva Kumar has been volunteering as a mental health advocate since she was in grade 9.
I saw a lot of my peers struggling with their own mental health, so I wanted to do my part and see if I could help them and create a space where we can talk openly about these things.
She was among a group of 7 people from Metro Vancouver being honored for their dedication to service at a ceremony at the Vancouver Art Gallery Sunday. In total, 15 British Columbians are being recognized, including 4 from Vancouver Island and 4 from the interior. 20-year-old Landon Brown has spent the pandemic collecting toys for sick kids who are receiving treatment in hospital.
Some of them can't afford a tablet or a phone to keep in touch, so we wanted to be able to give them that opportunity to contact their family and their friends.
Rachel Dong is a changemaker in her community, championing other young people to reduce their environmental footprint and food waste.
I potentially want to go into education, so I feel like educating and learning about these concepts are very important first step towards taking action.
The young volunteers say they are honored to be recognized for their work, but say this is just the beginning. They are encouraging others to step up and volunteer also.
It's sometimes hard to start your own initiative or become involved, but once you find that community who supports you, you can really go from there. And don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone.
Anyone can make a difference and just help your community.
Rashika says no matter how you choose to make a difference, do what makes you feel happy. Sohrab Sandhu, CBC News, Vancouver.
The number of people moving from BC to Alberta has reached a 20-year high due to lack of affordability, according to the latest data from StatsCan.
The market is not going to create like really cheap, low, affordable homes that are affordable to people with low incomes. That has to be nonprofit homes. That has to be government housing, social housing.
While highly sought after, these housing projects are not matching demand, causing the mass departure. Almost 55,000 people left the province in 2021. Significant changes are coming to BC's drug policy this week. On Tuesday, the province will become the first in Canada to decriminalize possessions of small amounts of illicit drugs for people aged 18 and older. The new drug exemption includes opioids, cocaine, ecstasy, and meth, not exceeding 2.5 grams. The pilot program will run for 3 years. The province hopes this move will help reduce the staggering rates of fatal overdoses in BC. According to the BC Coroner's Service, 14,000 people have died since the province declared a public health emergency. Officials are set to make an announcement Monday morning with more details. And over in Victoria, the city has passed a range of new housing measures as part of the Missing Middle Housing Initiative. The new policy, effective March 12th, will allow townhouses and houseplexes to be built without rezoning. It aims to increase affordable housing supply across the provincial capital. But some critics say it will not make life any easier for renters. One of the city councillors who voted against the proposal says the policy lacked any teeth to properly address housing affordability.
What we need affordable housing. But just to be completely clear, there is nothing affordable about this. And if there was affordable, that's what I'd be looking for, because that's what people say. We have a housing crisis in Victoria. We do not. We have an affordable housing crisis in Victoria.
Victoria Mayor Marianne Alto says the city is working to improve tenant protections and find ways to attract more developers to include affordable units in new buildings. Back in Vancouver, a group of motorcycle enthusiasts, tuners, racers, and builders gathered for the first ever Ace Moto Show this weekend.
I knew there was an amazing amount of fantastic motorcycles here in Vancouver, and they just needed a showcase to be shown off. And so I found this building and saw the opportunity, and so here we are.
Organizers say the show is an opportunity for people to show off a variety of bikes, whether it's a drawing or one they ride. Dupre says hundreds of hours have been spent perfecting each motorcycle. He hopes the event will continue for years to come. The Lake Babine Nation has signed a land transfer with the province, marking the return of 200 square kilometers of waterfront and forestry lands to the First Nation.
You know, we're looking at building within these lands and bringing back the community that we once had before, you know, colonization had been suppressed onto us.
Located west of Prince George, the land is part of an agreement signed in 2020. According to the BC government, the land transfer will enable the First Nation to expand its forestry business and drive economic opportunity in the region. The land was handed over without any restrictions on how it should be developed, as long as it is still in accordance with BC laws, bylaws, and building codes. The agreement is being used as a roadmap for reconciliation. Israel's prime minister has promised recourse as violence in Jerusalem and the West Bank escalates. More on the action being taken after the break. The Israeli government has announced new legal measures following a series of attacks that left at least 7 people dead this weekend. The day before those attacks, an Israeli raid on the West Bank killed 9 Palestinians. Susanna De Silva has the latest.
In Jerusalem, tears and cries of anguish as families buried some of the victims of the deadliest attack to strike Israeli civilians in more than a decade. On Friday, 7 people were killed after a Palestinian attacker opened fire at an East Jerusalem synagogue as Jews celebrated the Sabbath. He was later killed by police. Now part of the Israeli government's response, arresting dozens of the gunman's family and sealing the doors of their East Jerusalem home. The government says it's preparing to demolish it. We are not seeking escalation, but we are prepared for any possibility, said Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Our answer to terrorism is an iron fist. His ultra-nationalist coalition government's response could also include stripping residency and citizenship rights from the families of Palestinian attackers residing in Israel and forcibly relocating them to the occupied West Bank. It will also increase gun licenses for Israeli citizens to defend themselves. January has continued the trend of spiraling Israeli-Palestinian violence that made 2022 one of the deadliest years in recent history. Israel says it conducted a counter-terrorism operation against Palestinian militants on Thursday. 10 people died, including members of militant groups and 2 civilians. Militants retaliated by firing rockets into Israel, which then responded with airstrikes. And on Saturday, Israeli police say a 13-year-old Palestinian boy shot and injured 2 Israelis. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas blames the increased violence on the actions of Israel. All this adds new urgency to a planned visit by U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken Monday. He will meet with both the Israeli and Palestinian leaders and is expected to repeat calls for calm. Susanna De Silva, CBC News, Vancouver.
Time now for CBC Explore series Planet Wonder, hosted by our very own Johanna Wagstaff. This series asks unexpected climate questions, taking you on a journey to find the answer. For example, most of us check the weather on our phones at least once a day. I sometimes check it twice, 3 times. But how reliable is your cell phone forecast? Let's find out.
My name is Johanna Wagstaff. I'm a meteorologist and an earth scientist. Every day, I see the effects of climate change through my work. A relentless cycle of extreme weather, terrifying storms, deadly heat domes, wildfires, droughts. But I remain in awe of the natural world and how it finds ways to adapt. And that's what we explore on Planet Wonder.
What's the weather in 5 months for my wedding? I don't know. You said it wasn't going to rain. Actually, I did. Now, you might think I smirk at our use of weather apps, but I actually love them. I think it deepens our relationship with weather. I just know it's not my forecast, and I worry about our reliance on them during extreme weather. So that got me wondering, how reliable is the weather on your phone?
After 15 plus years of weather forecasting, it still amazes me that we can see the future. I mean, predict a hurricane or a heat dome that literally doesn't exist yet, just particles in the atmosphere that will likely come together in a way that will dramatically affect people. We've come a long way to get to the point where this forecast just shows up on your cell phone. It wasn't until the 19th century that the Western science of weather forecasting really began, out on the ocean. The electric telegraph meant weather reports could be transmitted from sea to a nearby port faster than the clouds could travel. Game changer. But these early forecasters were really just following the movement of storms without understanding the science behind it. It was Norwegian meteorologists in the early 20th century who worked out the mathematical equations which govern the physics of the atmosphere, the same equations we use today. Thank you, Norwegians. Tuck. Forecasts have become more accurate as we've obtained more data, especially from satellites, and developed super fast computers. There's something else that makes meteorology such a unique science: global cooperation. National agencies create their own forecasts, but knowing what the atmosphere is doing in one country helps the forecasts in another. That collaboration is more important than ever. Climate change is not only increasing extreme weather, it's impacting poorer countries the most, i.e. the ones that don't have those supercomputers. So what does this all mean for the weather on your phone? To get some perspective, I met up with Chris Doyle, who's done pretty much every kind of forecasting you can imagine, including being chief meteorologist for the 2010 Olympics.
Chris, it's so nice to finally meet you. I've been following you for years, and I seem to learn something new about meteorology every day from you, so nice to see you in person.
Oh, it's lovely to see you, Joanna.
And this is a spot that you come out to quite often. Why do you love it out here?
I just think it's sort of a part of nature, very close to the city.
And you're sort of in the weather too, which
you
is...
totally are. You can see the sky better here than anywhere else.
I wanted to start with a question that I get all the time. I'm sure you do too. How reliable is the weather on your phone?
Well, it kind of depends to a certain extent what app you're using. So there's one produced by Environment Canada called WeatherCan, I believe it's called. And that takes the forecast produced by meteorologists at the Pacific Storm Center in Vancouver and sort of translates it into icons and small amounts of text and drops it on your phone. And that's produced by people that are looking at the weather 24/7. A lot of apps take information directly from weather models, digital information that create a sort of automated forecast hour by hour for really as long as you like. And there's no human intervention in that, so if there's problems in those app forecasts early on, they're not going to be corrected, so they can be misleading.
Hold up. Let's hear what you think about those weather apps. How reliable do you think the weather on your phone is?
It'll be raining, it'll say it's only cloudy, so I find it's not really that reliable, but it's to help me coordinate my outfits, so I always check it. My Apple Watch, it's always on.
It's not too bad, it's within 1 or 2 degrees. And it'll tell me whether it's raining or snowing.
What app do you use?
I just asked Siri, to be honest.
It's as reliable as the people on the other end of the information, which, depending on where you're looking, I take the weather like the news, get multiple sources, and then kind of aggregate them, and you usually get somewhere in the middle, some kind of accuracy.
I 100% approve this answer. That is a smart way to use the weather on your phone.
Here is a time lapse of the beautiful weather over downtown Vancouver today. I hope you all got out and enjoyed the sunshine. I know I sure did. And I'll have your full forecast coming up next. Well, you may have noticed it was a bit frosty this morning in Metro Vancouver, and depending on where you live, those chilly temperatures could feel downright freezing. An Arctic air mass has settled over much of BC, bringing unseasonably low temperatures to regions across the province. In southeastern BC, temperatures are sitting around the -20 mark, with a wind chill making it feel much colder. Conditions are expected to last throughout Monday. Let's take a look now at your full forecast. We'll begin with a look at your current temperatures. -2 in West Vancouver and at the Vancouver Airport, -4 in Pitt Meadows, so a little chillier there, and Abbotsford. South of the border, -3 in Bellingham. And taking a peek at tomorrow's forecast, let's begin in Dease Lake. -10 is your daytime high with a possibility of snow in the morning. Prince Rupert, 2 degrees tomorrow with periods of snow mixed with rain. Prince George, much colder with a high of -8 and snow. Same in Williams Lake. And over in Cranbrook, much colder temperatures at -12, but mainly sunny. Kelowna is also going to see some of that sun with a high of -5. And in Victoria, a daytime high of 3 degrees and cloudy. And taking a peek at our 5-day forecast here in Metro Vancouver, tomorrow is going to be 1 degree and cloudy. On Tuesday, a little bit warmer with 2 degrees, but a 40% chance of rain or flurries. On Wednesday, 6 degrees with rain and some clouds. Thursday, 8 degrees with a 60% chance of showers, I should say. And Friday, 7 degrees is our daytime high with periods of rain. That is your late news for this chilly Sunday night. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you're watching from your couch, all nice and cozy at home. For news anytime, of course, you can head to our website, cbc.ca/bc. Have a great night.